I never imagined that being left alone while my parents took my twin sister to Hawaii would lead to me receiving a mysterious $50,000 check, and now my sister is throwing tantrums over it. Just a few weeks ago, my sister Ava and I graduated from high school, both of us ready to head off to college in the fall. I have to admit, my twin sister Ava has always outshined me academically, her natural brilliance making my own achievements seem dim in comparison. While she buried herself in books, I found my passion on the football field, the smell of grass and the thrill of the game speaking to my soul in a way that textbooks never could. Recently, I earned an athletic scholarship, no small feat for a girl in today's world. But my parents couldn't see past Ava's valedictorian status, rewarding her with a Hawaiian vacation while I received nothing more than a congratulations card. Now, with this unexpected gift from a stranger, my sister's demanding that I share what's rightfully mine, just like she's shared everything else in her life, or so she claims. The day after graduation, I watched in silence as my parents asked Ava what she wanted as a reward for her hard work, telling her she deserved anything her heart desired. They never even glanced my way, but honestly, I wasn't surprised. It's been this way for as long as I can remember, Ava always taking center stage in our family's spotlight. After a few minutes of contemplation, like a princess making a royal decree, Ava announced she wanted a Hawaiian vacation with her friends. My parents immediately agreed, and Ava practically floated up to her room, already texting her friends about their upcoming paradise getaway. While she was upstairs, I gathered my courage to ask my parents if I could join them, though deep down, I already knew the answer. Usually, I'd be included in family trips, but this was different. This was Ava's reward, and my presence wasn't part of her perfect picture. The truth is, she's never really liked me, and I suppose the feeling's mutual. We may be twins, but we're as different as summer and winter. She's been spoiled rotten, treating everyone around her with a sense of entitlement that would make Marie Antoinette blush. Nobody at school really likes her, except for her little clique of followers who think she's perfect, probably because they're cut from the same expensive cloth. When I asked about joining the trip, my parents' hesitation spoke volumes. I could read the no in their eyes before they even opened their mouths. Their silence wasn't about considering my request. They were just searching for the gentlest way to reject me. Finally, Mom spoke up, explaining that this was Ava's reward and including me would turn it into a family vacation. I pointed out the obvious, they were going too. But they brushed that aside, saying they were only going because Ava wanted them there, and since she and I didn't get along, she wouldn't want me there. After that crystal clear message, I retreated to my room, feeling the familiar ache of being the less loved daughter. I might not have straight A's, but surely my football scholarship was worth celebrating too. Yet my parents couldn't see past Ava's academic glory. To add insult to injury, they were planning to leave me alone for a week while Ava lived it up in Hawaii with her friends. After spending a day wallowing in self-pity, it dawned on me that having the house to myself for a week might not be so bad. That thought lifted my spirits a bit, and I decided to make the most of my solitary situation. As they packed for their trip, I felt invisible, forgotten like an old photograph tucked away in a drawer. It wasn't an unfamiliar feeling, but it stung just the same. On the day they left, my parents reminded me to take care of the house. At least they said, "Goodbye." Ava just smirked and walked past me without a word. Her behavior wasn't surprising, it just illustrated how broken our relationship had become over the years. For the first few days of my solitude, I tried to make the best of it, inviting friends over for marathon video game sessions and indulging in more junk food than any teenager should. That became my daily routine, and I planned to keep it up until my family's return. But fate had other plans that presented themselves at 8 a.m. one morning, when the doorbell jolted me from my sleep. It was far too early for any of my friends to show up, especially since we'd all been staying up late enjoying our post-graduation freedom. Still groggy, I made my way downstairs and peered through the window, my heart skipping a beat at what I saw. For a moment, my sleep-addled brain thought my mother was standing on our porch, but it took a few minutes to remember she was supposed to be in Hawaii. As my eyes focused, I noticed subtle differences that made this scenario even more puzzling. This woman was taller than my mother, appeared somewhat younger, and had stylish blonde highlights that my conservative mother would never dream of getting. The resemblance was uncanny, yet the differences were just enough to tell me this wasn't my mother, but someone who shared her features in an almost unsettling way. Given the strong family resemblance, I reasoned she must be a relative, and after observing her for a few more moments, I decided to open the door. She introduced herself as my mother's cousin, explaining that she'd been living in England for the past 20 years, which was why we'd never met. Something about this didn't quite add up. As far as I knew, my mother was an only child, and she'd never mentioned having cousins. Though this woman did look younger than my mother, which aligned with her story, the degree of resemblance between cousins seemed oddly strong. And in all my years, I never once heard my mother mention having a cousin in England. Though, to be fair, my mother and I didn't exactly have heart-to-heart conversations. I invited her in, but was surprised when she said she'd come specifically to see my sister and me. That caught me off guard. Why would this mysterious relative want to see us? I had to explain that my sister wasn't home, that I was alone. Her face clouded with concern as she asked where everyone was, and something in her expression, a genuine warmth I rarely saw in my own family, made me trust her. I found myself telling her the truth about how my family had left me behind to celebrate my sister's graduation in Hawaii, despite the fact that I'd graduated too. Like everyone else who'd heard this story, she seemed shocked, but her reaction felt deeper somehow, more personal. I downplayed how hurt I felt, worried that sharing too much family drama with this stranger might get back to my mother. Her response took me completely by surprise. She expressed sincere regret and said she wanted to give me a present to show she understood. Then, to my absolute astonishment, she pulled out a checkbook and asked me to name an amount. I'd never experienced anything like this before. It felt surreal, like something out of a movie. I tried to refuse, telling her I couldn't possibly accept money from her. After a few minutes of back and forth, she insisted on writing the amount herself, and my jaw nearly hit the floor when she wrote a check for $50,000. It was an astronomical sum, more money than I'd ever seen, and I protested that I couldn't accept such a generous gift. But she wouldn't hear my objections, insisting I had to take it, saying cryptically that it was the least she could do. Words that still puzzle me to this day. In the end, I felt I had no choice but to accept the check. We chatted a bit about family afterward, but her mind seemed elsewhere, as if she was wrestling with something she couldn't or wouldn't say. After about 30 minutes, she said she needed to leave, expressing hope that we'd meet again soon. After she left, the strangeness of the encounter settled over me like a fog. Something about her story of being my mother's cousin didn't ring true, and that feeling wouldn't go away. Cousins don't look that similar, it just doesn't happen. Though I tried to rationalize it, a nagging thought kept creeping into my mind. What if my mother had a sister none of us knew about, and that's why this woman had to lie about being a cousin? It sounds like something out of a soap opera, I know, but the resemblance was just too striking to ignore. Now, here's where I messed up. Though the check was made out to me, I'd never actually seen a real check before. I had no idea if it was genuine or some elaborate joke, let alone what to do with it. In my world of payment apps and digital transactions, checks seemed like relics from my parents' era. So I just tucked it under a pile of mail on the coffee table that had arrived for my parents that week. Later, when my friends came over for what turned into a small party, I told them about the check. They found it as bizarre as I did, so we just put it back where I'd left it. The next morning, my family returned from Hawaii, all suntanned and cheerful. Everyone except me, of course. Within minutes of arriving home, my parents started sorting through the mail, and that's when they found the check. My father immediately launched into an interrogation. Naturally, anyone would have questions about a $50,000 check written to their child. Once the check was discovered, I knew there was no point in hiding anything. I told them about the mysterious visitor, our conversation, and how she had insisted on giving me this generous gift, mentioning that I'd already researched how to deposit it. But something fascinating happened while I was telling this story. My parents' demeanor completely changed. I'm not exaggerating when I say the color drained from their faces. It was especially noticeable because they just returned from Hawaii with fresh tans. Suddenly, they looked pale and started sweating. I was about to ask Mom who this English cousin of her really was, because it was clear they were hiding something. But before I could, my spoiled sister derailed the entire conversation. True to form, she started complaining right on cue. She whined about how the check was only in my name, insisting I should have asked this aunt to include both our names. I pointed out that this woman knew about both of us but deliberately chose to write the check to me alone. When I tried to steer the conversation back to my parents, they quickly shifted to discussing the check instead. It was an obvious attempt to change the subject, and it worked perfectly. They cleverly used my sister's complaints to start an argument, and she took the bait just like they knew she would. Looking back now, I never expected so many people would care about my situation or take time to offer advice. It's somehow comforting to know I'm not alone in feeling unloved by my family. I'm grateful for that, at least. I know my original post might have seemed confused, but honestly, given my situation, who wouldn't be? Let me explain things more clearly this time. First and foremost, I've decided to move out of my parents' house. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I know it's what they want, and more importantly, what I need. I'd hesitated before because it felt too drastic, like I was taking things too far. But this time, they were the ones who went too far. I've never had a good relationship with my parents or my sister, and I can't see any reason to keep pretending we're a happy family. That's why I decided to stay with my friend's family until college starts. When I offered to pay rent, his parents kindly insisted I stay for free, the kind of generosity I'd never experienced in my own home. His father even offered to help me set up a bank account and deposit the check, assuring me it was genuine, not some elaborate prank. So yes, I'm leaving, and I'm keeping every penny of that money for myself. The check was written solely in my name, and I have no obligation to share it with anyone, especially not my sister. If they hadn't left me alone while they went on vacation, I probably would never have met this aunt or received this money. In a way, they brought this on themselves. It's ridiculous for my sister to expect me to share anything with her now, when she's never shown me an ounce of kindness or respect in all our years together. While my parents will always take care of my sister, I know I'm on my own. That's exactly why I need this money more than she does. If they've never cared about me, why should I care about their feelings now? 3 days after posting this, I'm packing my things. Tomorrow afternoon, my friend's father is coming with his truck, and I'm finally getting out of here. I can hardly wait for this new chapter of my life to begin. Update 2. It's amazing how much can change in just 4 days. My whole life has turned upside down. I don't even know where to begin, but I guess I'll start where I left off. Remember how I said I was moving out? Well, I did it the very next day. My friend's father came to help me move, loading up boxes of my belongings. I didn't need furniture, just the boxes containing my life. My parents stood there watching the whole time, not saying a word. Ava couldn't even be bothered to come out of her room. She appeared once, glanced at what was happening, then disappeared again. After loading the last box, I was ready to leave without saying goodbye. I figured none of them really cared anyway. But as I reached for the door, my mother stopped me, asking where I planned to go. I told her how for days, no one in the family had spoken to me, acting like I didn't even exist. I said they didn't need to pretend anymore. Now that I was moving out, they could live their perfect family life and forget all about me. It shouldn't have come as a surprise, I added, since Mom herself had said I had no place in their home unless I shared the money with my sister. Since I had no intention of sharing with anyone, I figured I'd leave on my own terms rather than be thrown out. My parents just said I was being foolish, that my arrogance would fade once I realized $50,000 wouldn't last long on my own. I walked out without responding, and they didn't try to stop me again. Strangely enough, my friend's father showed more understanding than my own parents ever had, assuring me on the drive to his house that everything would work out. I've been staying in their guest room ever since, experiencing what real family support feels like. My friend has always been an incredible person, and now I understand why. It's his family. Their kindness shows me what a real family should be like, how they support and care for each other unconditionally. I'm grateful they're letting me stay until college starts, but that's not even the biggest revelation of these past few days. I finally discovered the truth about our mysterious visitor, and I'm still struggling to process it. Remember how I mentioned the woman's uncanny resemblance to my mother, how I suspected she might be an unknown sister? Well, it turns out my instincts were right. Last night, she reached out to me through social media and shared a story that turned my whole world upside down. She was my mother's sister, who had been cast out of the family at 19 when she became pregnant. And here's the part that feels like a punch to the gut. Ava and I were her children. Yes, you heard that right, she was our biological mother. But being just a 19-year-old college student, she was pressured by her parents to give us up for adoption. As fate would have it, my adoptive parents had been trying to have a baby but were experiencing fertility issues. After a family meeting, it was decided that my mother, the woman I've always known as my mother, would adopt us. But there was a catch. They only wanted one child, specifically a girl. That's when our biological mother took her stand, refusing to separate us and insisting we be placed together. Our grandparents eventually convinced my adoptive parents to take both of us. For the first few months after the adoption, our birth mother visited us. But my adoptive mother put a stop to it, claiming having two mothers would only confuse us growing up. She insisted it would be best if our birth mother kept her distance until she gave permission for contact. Our grandparents sided with my adoptive mother, telling their younger daughter to stay away. This led to a huge falling out, with years of silence between them. Finally, earlier this year, she reached out to our parents again. Our grandparents had apparently had a change of heart and gave her our address. That's how she found us. She thought that now, with us being 18, it might be the perfect time to build a relationship, hoping to eventually share the truth. But when she saw how we were being treated, particularly how I was being marginalized while Ava was favored, she realized she'd made a mistake in agreeing to the adoption. Especially when it became clear that my adoptive mother had only really wanted to mother one daughter. Sure, they'd taken both of us, but they'd only truly embraced Ava. She felt responsible and believed she owed me the truth, knowing no one else would tell me. Hours have passed since I read her message, and I still can't wrap my head around it. I haven't told my friend or his family. I haven't told anyone. Writing it here is the first time I've even attempted to put it into words. I haven't responded to her message, though she can see I've read it. So many things make sense now, but I'm at a loss for what to say or do. I feel numb, confused, completely overwhelmed. Life doesn't stop for earth-shattering revelations, though, and I know I'll have to do something eventually. I just don't know what that something is yet. But I'll figure it out. Somehow, I'll find my way through this maze of emotions and truth. Update 3, it's been 2 weeks since I received that message from my aunt, no, my mother. To be honest, I still don't know what to call her. One minute she was my aunt, and the next, she's suddenly my mother. And I have to admit, she's shown more maternal instinct than the woman who raised me. After taking my time to process everything, I finally replied to her message 3 days ago. I told her we had so much to talk about and suggested meeting in person. I also let her know I was open to having a relationship with her. After all, I'd already lost the family I thought I had. What harm could come from giving her a chance? Everyone makes mistakes, and hers was made when she was just 19. I can't hold that against her. I haven't told Ava about any of this yet. I don't think it's my place to tell her. That truth needs to come from our birth mother. I don't know if she'll tell her yet, but what I do know is that in a few days, I'll be meeting with my birth mother to start rebuilding what was lost. She's back in our lives now, and this time she's not going anywhere. I'm actually feeling a bit excited, if I'm being honest. I just hope everything works out. Update 4: several weeks have passed since my last post, and it's been just over a week since I met with my birth mother. I needed time to think and process everything before writing about it. I still haven't cashed the check. I don't need the money right now, but I will deposit it soon. I'll explain more about that later. First, I want to say that the reunion with my birth mother went really well. We talked about everything, including her decision to give us up for adoption. While I can't say I fully understand it, I'm starting to think maybe it was the best decision she could make at the time. It might not have worked out well for me with my adoptive parents, but she had no way of knowing that would happen. My adoptive mother wasn't a bad person from the start. She just wanted a daughter, and I wasn't the one she connected with. I didn't suffer the kind of abuse some commenters suggested. I never went hungry or faced physical or verbal abuse. I just wasn't loved as much as Ava. That's cruel to do to a child, but I'm not trying to defend their actions. I can't help but wonder what life would have been like with my birth mother. That led us to talk about the circumstances of our adoption. She told me about her relationship with our biological father. It wasn't very serious, at least not for him. As you might guess, our biological father wanted nothing to do with us. He even demanded she get an abortion. That alone is reason enough never to contact him, though I try not to dwell on it. My birth mother wanted to raise us by herself. At first, she thought she was only having one baby. Even that would have been challenging for a college student, but my grandparents didn't want her to abandon her education. She planned to drop out, find a job, and raise the baby with their help. But my grandparents gave her an ultimatum. They would only help if she gave the baby up for adoption. Then came the news that she was carrying twins, which complicated everything even further. By that point, our biological father had broken up with her, and his parents had pulled him out of college. No one knows what became of him, where he is, what he did with his life, or if he's even still alive. That's when my adoptive parents entered the picture, and everything unfolded as I mentioned before. After giving us up, my birth mother finished her degree and found work in England, where her field offered plenty of opportunities. I suspect she also needed to put an ocean between herself and the children she couldn't see. Now she's back as a university professor, teaching at a different college than the one I'll attend, but she's here to stay. That means we can visit each other whenever we want. While learning I was adopted wasn't exactly welcome news, I can understand how devastating it must have been for a single mother to learn she was having twins. One baby would have been challenging enough. 2 must have seemed impossible. So I'm trying not to be angry with her. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. Nobody has a guidebook for handling something like this in life. As for my sister, she still doesn't know unless our adoptive parents have told her. My birth mother plans to tell her eventually. About the $50,000, it turns out she had sold her house in England and, since her new university provides housing, she'd planned to give some of that money to both Ava and me. But after seeing how we were treated, she put it in my name only. I'm planning to use this money for college expenses since my scholarship only covers part of the costs. My birth mother has offered to help with additional expenses too. So I'm going to save as much as I can. Maybe for a down payment on a house someday. If anything else happens, I'll update again. Update 5, I'll keep this update brief, focusing mainly on what I've learned about Ava and my birth mother. First, to answer everyone's questions. Yes, I've deposited the check. It wasn't as complicated as I thought, though I still prefer payment apps. I spent a weekend at my birth mother's university campus, and it was so amazing I almost wish I could get a scholarship there. Though I play football at a Division II school, and her university is Division I. It's a level above what I'm capable of playing. Now, about my sister. Ava knows who our birth mother is. Our birth mother went to tell her in person. I'll spare you the boring details since I wasn't there, but I'll share what our birth mother told me about it. It happened about 10 days ago when everyone was home. Either mom or dad answered the door, and though they were reluctant to let her in at first, after some discussion on the doorstep and learning that I already knew, they agreed to let her enter. The four of them sat down together, and she revealed the truth to Ava. My sister's reaction mirrored mine at first. Pure disbelief, but eventually, reality seemed to sink in. She wasn't happy about learning she was adopted, though. And really, how could she be? She's been treated like a princess her whole life. She was particularly angry about the check. That our birth mother had given me money but not her. The ironic part is that our birth mother could write her a check too. She hasn't said it outright, but that was clearly her original intention. But now, who knows what will happen? According to Ava, she doesn't want to know anything about our birth mother. She insists our adoptive parents are her real parents. She's off to college now too, so we'll see how things unfold. I'm not speaking to her, and I don't plan to. As for me, I'll keep in contact with our birth mother. She's the only person in that whole family who's shown me any real kindness. I'm talking about my adoptive parents here. Our grandparents were always neutral toward me. Who knows what my sister will do? Maybe she'll give our birth mother a chance, maybe she won't. Either way, it's not something I need to worry about right now.